Well, hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining this webinar today by KarmaHelp Foundation on the Payment Protection Program Loan Forgiveness. I am Kelly Ryan Bailey, and I am hosting our session today. I am the host of Let's Talk About Skills Baby, which is a podcast and YouTube channel. I'm also the director of Open Skills at MZ, which is a labor market analytics firm. And I am the director of operations at The Scone Pony, which is my family bakery. So like many of you with a small business, as owning a small business with my family, we also had to apply for the PPP loan and are now just trying to determine if we qualify for the forgiveness plan. So I am especially looking forward to what we can learn today on this session. And if you are a borrower of the PPP loan and you live in the United States, you may be wondering if you are eligible, and that's what we're going to be covering today. KarmaHelp Foundation, who is hosting this session today, has put together this distinguished panel of experts to help us determine that. We just want to give a quick little disclaimer because these qualifications are changing. What we're going to review today is definitely valid today, but we suggest that if you do watch this at a later date, please make sure you double check those qualifications to make sure you have the latest updates. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guests today. We have Gautam, Makani, and Ronald Flores today. Gautam Makani heads product strategy and product management for the lending solutions portfolio at Almatrek. He recently launched a PPP loan forgiveness product, which is a white label offering for banks, credit unions, and fintechs that enables their customers to easily apply for PPP forgiveness. Gautam is also launching a next-gen loan origination solution for mid-tier US banks and credit unions that uses AI and automation to accelerate the lending process and improve business outcomes for commercial and personal loans. In his spare time, he enjoys yoga and swimming, and he is trying to learn jazz guitar at the CJC Jazz School in Berkeley. Very nice, Gautam. Ronald Flores is the CEO and founder of Curious Finance and is our second guest for the day. He has helped find solutions for individuals during times of financial stress for many years. In 2017, he established Curious Finance to assist tax professionals and attorneys in helping business owners proactively and strategically solve their tax dilemmas and reduce the cost of running their businesses. So the format for today is that Gautam and Ronald will both be giving a short presentation, and then we will leave plenty of time for a question and answer session. Like I mentioned earlier, the chat is open. I will be monitoring that and asking questions here at the end for you all. So please feel free to type in questions at any time. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Gautam. Gautam, please. I'm going to put you up on the screen here and you are all set.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Hello, everybody. Good that you could join us today. And I'm hoping this session will be useful for you. So by way of introduction, as Kelly mentioned, I had the lending solutions portfolio at Altimetric. And in addition to that, my wife has a small business as well. So I did look into the PPP loan forgiveness, but I did not end up applying for myself. However, I've been through lots of hours peering over the PPP loan forgiveness requirements as part of my product offering and have spoken with a lot of banks and fintechs with respect to my solution. So I'll take maybe about 15 to 20 minutes to share my slides. And I will give another disclaimer. So I am primarily a technologist, so I'm not a deep tax level expert. Though I do know considerable amount about the PPP forgiveness. So while this information I would say is pretty accurate, you might, in terms of taking your decisions, you might want to consult, especially your banker, as you go through the forgiveness process. So I'm going to share my slides. Actually, I'll share my screen in that way. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
It's actually set up, Gautam, to be, you may want to make it a full screen. We're seeing,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Like this.
There you go.
Okay, great. All right, so I have the agenda here. So that comes up. Yeah, so this is what I'll be covering for my portion. So a quick review of PPP loans and forgiveness. I'll be going into some level of detail on the eligible expense, i.e. the payroll, the mortgage interest, rents and leases. What are eligible expenses? And I'll also cover some examples of some non-eligible expenses, right? So payroll, mortgage interest, rents, leases, utilities. There is an interesting calculator that I found on the web. I would recommend that everybody use it as you go through your journey on applying for forgiveness. And you can use that anytime. It'll help you calculate what is your total forgiveness amount. And I'll also cover the question of whether it should be 24 weeks period or 8 weeks. And there may be situations where you might want to use one or the other. So I'll kind of talk through that in some level of detail. And the next one is about the choice of the form. So there are two choices. There's an easy form and there's a long form. And which form would be most applicable to you, right? Then I'll also cover the application process, right? So as you apply for the loan with your lender, be it a bank or a fintech or a credit union, what is the documentation you would need to have in hand? How would you apply? And some sense of what happens at the bank when you submit your forgiveness application. And also I'll cover when is the best time to apply, right? So this is kind of what I'll be going through, right? So a brief review of PPP loans and forgiveness. I know we've all, or most of us have applied for the loan, but just to review it, it did close on August 8th. So if you haven't applied for the loan, unfortunately, it is too late to apply for the loan, right? And we should keep in mind, it's part of the 2.2 trillion CARES Act, right? Essentially the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It is a major portion, but it's not by far all of it. And just to review the loans, the loan profile as such, the maximum PPP loan amount you could have applied for is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost, interest rate of 1%, and loans issued prior to June 5th have a maturity of 2 years, and after June 5th have a maturity of 5 years. And loan payments are deferred for 6 months, right? So in terms of maturity and such, well, that is true, but the real benefit of PPP loans is they can be forgiven in part or in full. And you as a business owner, you truly want to maximize your forgiveness, i.e. you want to aim and get 100% of your PPP loan forgiven, right? So you want to ensure that really happens, otherwise you're leaving money on the table, right? Now, let's go through and then understand what are eligible expenses. So the SBA has defined pretty thoroughly what are eligible expenses. So they fall in these 3 buckets. There's payroll expenses, there's rents and leases, and mortgage interest and utilities. So it's got to fall in one of those buckets. And with the latest guidance, the payroll has got to be at least a minimum of 60% and up. So that has to be part of the calculation for you. And now what's ineligible expenses? So, well, you might say, can I club some things in payroll? Can I club some of my expenses in utilities? Well, things like job board costs, things like business, travel and entertainment, those are not eligible. So if you try and get those in as part of your PPP loan forgiveness application, your lender will not accept that. And given this, IRS, the payroll minimum amount has got to be, 60%. Previously it was 75%, right? But still the challenges for most business owners, especially small business, is in maximizing those expenses. So how do you go about meeting that 60% threshold for payroll? I think that's a challenge that most business folks will have. And you really want to kind of match to the PPP loan amount. So whatever it was your loan amount, you really want to make sure that you get to that loan amount, 100% of it. So one thing, if you're a 1040C filer who is a self-employed individual, independent contractor, basically you're a solo person, right? You're a gig worker, maybe an Uber, right? So the owner compensation replacement is one thing that SBA has come out with. So essentially for the 24-week period, they said, that's an easy calculation. So you get that's a maximum of 20,833. And this is mostly the case because people, who do things like, let's say you have your own cap and such, you're not going to go through a payroll company and pay yourself through payroll. So you may not be able to, kind of describe and prove out what your payroll is. But then this concept of owner compensation replacement, that's an easy way. And that's a maximum of 20,833. Essentially, that's the number that you'd want to shoot for. Right? Now I'll cover each of the eligible expenses in detail here. So let's look at payroll. So for employees, so again, you're not a solo company, but let's assume you're a business that has employees. So the payroll is capped for a 24-week period. And this is what I would recommend that everybody use, given the choice of between an 8-week and a 24-week period. It is capped at $46,154 per employee. So, and the calculation for that is, it's 24 weeks in a year. So 100,000 is the maximum eligible amount. So you would, 100K by 52 times 24, that's 46K. So, as a business, if you have employees and if you can get to that, that amount, and you can prove that you are paying this amount for your employees, you can actually get to 46K per employee as a business. Of course, that has caveats that in your, you've got to be able to show to the lender that that's what you've been paying them consistently, right, all through. So that they'll be looking at your payroll records for that. Now, it's a little different for owner employees. But owner employees that really don't come across as owner employees, i.e. folks who have less than a 5% stake in a C corporation or S corporation, they're treated essentially the same as employees. So that cap of 46K for 24 weeks, that would apply to them as well as being an owner employee. But other owner employees that really, let's say you own an S corp or a C corp, for your compensation, I'm not talking of the employee portion. So when you calculate what the forgiveness portion is, and say what is my portion of that forgiveness amount, that is capped for an 8-week period. It's 15,385, or for 24 weeks, it's 20,833, and that's arrived at. Let's say I'll just take the 24-week example, is 2.5 months worth of 2019 net profit, and that's always 100K. So IRS doesn't want to pay anything over 100K on an annualized basis as part of this forgiveness, PPP forgiveness, right, or the PPP loan amount. And what's also covered under payroll. So if you look at what payroll is, So there's obvious payroll, what you pay your employees or and contractors. And yeah, just remember, contractors are also included. So whoever you pay as part of your business, that's payroll. And you'd also include healthcare, right? Except healthcare costs for S corporation owners can't be included. And that's because S corporations flows through into your 1040. And so they're trying to make sure that you don't sort of claim that. But healthcare for S corporations is not included. But retirement and 401k, including S corporation owners, so that is covered. You can also cover employer profit sharing contribution. So you want to understand, when you look at payroll, it's just not maybe you have an insured payroll, just don't take that. Include all of these costs, i.e. healthcare, retirement, 401k, profit sharing, all of these are valid payroll contributions, right? Or sorry, payroll expenses that you would account for, right? Now I'll move on to the second portion of the PPP eligible expenses, i.e. mortgage interest, rents, and leases. So mortgage, and the SBA is kind of clear on it. It's business mortgage obligation on real or personal property. So it's really, I think you need to look into it and say, is it your home property? Is it your personal home? That quite wouldn't qualify. But if it's some sort of a business mortgage obligation, I think that's one would apply, right? So if you have a home-based business on which you have a mortgage, that would apply, right? But if it's just, you have your business somewhere else and you have your own home, and then you're saying, well, I pay mortgage on my home, and you can't prove any direct correlation between your home and your business, that would not apply. So you couldn't take that. Let's say you are having rents or leases. So all of these are examples here: rent for an office space or a building, rent for business equipment. Let's say you have a storefront, kiosk. Let's say you have a barbershop or a salon, right? And you rent a chair or a booth in there. So all of those are valid rents, and you do want to include those. So another example is rent for a personal space you use solely for business purposes. So i.e., if you had some sort of a home office for, some portion of your, you could claim a home office expense on your 2019 taxes, and you flow that as rent to your 2019 taxes, you can include that as well. Auto leases for business, that also is allowed. So disallowed, an example of something that's not allowed is, let's say you rent a building, and then you sublease a portion of it to a tenant or a subtenant. So you can't claim 100%, of that. So let's say whatever the tenant pays you, you do have to subtract that, from whatever you're renting. So let's say you rented for maybe $5,000 a month, and you sublease a portion of that out to a tenant for $1,000. You can't really claim all of the $5,000. You do want to subtract out $1,000, right? So that's on the mortgage interest, rents, and leases. Now let's come to utilities, right? So the third portion is the utilities. So the allowed expenses here are electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, and internet access. And it's pretty strict. So SBA is pretty clear and strict about, these are the allowable utilities. And so, for instance, you'd look through all your bills, you'd get all of that, but you couldn't do things like, and I've looked around and looked for documentation. Web hosting, which you might think seems like an internet access type of an expense. Web hosting is not, to my knowledge, doesn't look like it is included. You might say software and hardware, that's sort of a utility because, hardware, software and such. That seems like almost like an internet access, but I don't believe you can include software and hardware expense there. And similarly, things like subscriptions or data feeds that you have as part of your business, you can't claim those under utilities. Okay. Yeah, so one thing, again, I said in the beginning is the forgiveness calculator. So I'd like to show you, maybe I'll show you this at the end so I don't have to get out of my PowerPoint. But I would recommend folks, as you are considering your forgiveness application, I'd say go to this, and this, it's a, the URL is ppploancalc.com. And as a disclaimer, I don't have any tie-ups with that company. I did have my own product as part of Ultimetric, where we had a loan forgiveness white label solution. But this is just something I found on the web. I thought it is something that's useful as you try to understand your forgiveness amounts. So this is a pretty cool calculator. You can walk through this. There is no need for you to enter in your email ID. So you don't have to give any personal information. You just fill in your numbers and you get a sense of, are you able to match the loan amount or not? And if you're not, where does it fall short, right? So I'd say this is a pretty useful resource. And we will put this as part of the webinar resources. Right. One other question that comes up is, and this is kind of confusing, the SBA gives you the choice of 24 weeks or 8 weeks. And it can get fairly nuanced, right? However, the choice of making whether it's 24 weeks covered period or 8 weeks is only if you received your PPP loan before June 5th. After June 5th, you got to take the 24 weeks option. In my mind, so I've looked at the numbers, I've looked at the scenarios. I would say probably 95% of the cases, 24 weeks is better. You would definitely want to use a 24 weeks covered period than 8 weeks. 95, probably 98% of the time, 24 weeks is what you'd want to use. And there's some very few boundary cases where the 8 weeks thing might make sense. However, I think that's kind of splitting hairs. And I would just recommend that if you're trying to understand, well, what period do I choose? I would say just take the 24-week period. Now, there are easy or not. So like this is the question also comes up, is SBA has 2 forms available, and it's pretty clear about which form to use. But just to be clear, yeah, I see Sukhmander Singh, you raised your hand. So why don't I address your question? We have a Q&A session right towards the end. So maybe if you don't mind holding on.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll hold questions here to the, oh, he did that by mistake. No problem at all, but we will hold questions till the end. You keep going ahead right now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so this is the question about easy or not, right? If you go to the SBA website, it's pretty clear on how to do it. So I've just broken it down. So there's 3 conditions, right? If any of these are true, you just go ahead and fill out the easy form. And I'll just state it, right? The easy form is something you can fill out and you can take to your lender. Most likely, and this is the product that I built, most likely your vendor or your lender, sorry, right? Your lender will have a website that's pretty clear that makes it really easy for you to apply. So you don't really have to worry about whether you need to fill a easy form or not if your lender has a pretty decent website. But just in case, you might also want to just fill it out for your own sake, right? So the 3 conditions are, if you're a self-employed individual, if you're an independent contractor or a sole proprietor, and you have no employees. So you just, you'd go fill out the easy form. If you did not reduce compensation, let's say now this is if you don't have any employees, but if you had employees, step number 2 is, if you did not reduce compensation by more than 25%, and you did not reduce your employees. So remember, the PPP, the rules are about, there's 2 parts, right? About saying, you had some hardships, or did you reduce compensation for your employees? And then as part of that same hardship, did you just, lay off any employees? So this rule number says, 2 says that if you did not reduce employees and you did not reduce compensation by more than 25%, just go fill out the easy form. And the third one that came in a little after, right? So it's a little bit more recent, is kind of the same thing, where it says if you did not reduce compensation by more than 25% and you could not operate due to COVID. So this is kind of a definition of because of the social distancing constraints that COVID impinges on you, you could not operate your business. Then also you're eligible to use the easy form. And the easy form is, I would say in my mind, right, I've gone through the both, I've filled out both as part of my product work. I would say the easy form is one place where it just makes it more simpler for you to understand how to fill it out and also get your full matching funds back, right? Basically matched to your PPP loan amount. So it's always best to make sure that you fill out the easy form. Right, so the other thing I want to cover is on the application and documentation. So typically, right, most 95, 99% of the time, you just apply at your bank or lender's website. And it may also happen that, let's say you fill out the form, maybe you want to be doubly sure, you go to your accountant and you fill out either the easy form or the long form with the help of your accountant. The bank's website or the bank loan officer, they may just take your filled out PPP forgiveness form as the PDF form. So that might also happen. But the easier thing is just to go apply at your bank's website. So when you do the application, you would want to have these things handy. Basically, the documentation on payroll reports, right? Can you prove what you are paying since, and it's pretty specific. It wants to ask in terms of payroll records. Basically, the bank wants to understand what were you paying since the beginning of the year for the employees, and what did you pay, after you got that loan amount, basically the covered period, whether or not you reduce wages. So they do a lot of scrutiny on the payroll reports to understand whether or not you reduced wages. So those are important. You do want to provide payroll reports. Tax forms, whether you file form 940, 941, or 940. So all of those tax forms, and it would also go back to the previous year, because that way they can match the payroll tax, the payroll amounts that are in the tax forms. And also the canceled checks, so any proof of payment, right? Either payment receipts, checks, canceled checks, transfers of accounts, or any documents that you can show to verify that you paid the wages and all the other expenses, right? For utilities, lease, mortgage, rents, or whatnot. So you want to be able to prove all your expenses. And what happens at the bank is the bank lender verifies all the documentation. They ensure that the documentation is accurate. If they have any questions, they'll get back to you. So that's the way it kind of works. Now, with all of this, I would caveat it and say, in my opinion, right, in my perspective, from my perspective, the bank lender, they are going to be overwhelmed. I know this because there is going to be a flood of forgiveness applications that are going to come in, and banks are and the lenders, they're going to have a fairly tough time to verify a lot of this. So, but however, it's on them to do that because they're the vendor, they're the lender, and they're being paid to process the PPP loan. But there may be shortfalls in how they verify and such. So, what my point is, you want to make sure that you make it as easy and as clear to the loan officer that's reviewing your forgiveness application, to avoid any delays and back and forth. So try and make sure that everything is accurate and everything is submitted in the very first go. I would estimate that a bank loan officer spends on the order of maybe an hour to 2 hours on each forgiveness application. And you want to ensure that document is up to date, it's accurate when you submit, right, your forgiveness application. And I think this is my last slide. This is about the best time to apply. What you might be wondering, well, should I apply now or later? Some of this, especially from the hardship provisions, safe harbor provisions, you do have time till December 31st. However, my sense is, if you're exhausted your funds and you can prove that all the funds were used, i.e. there's no need for you to wait till the end of the year. If you can show that based on whatever be the employees and such that you have, and maybe you reinstated the employees if you had let some of them go, or if you had made any wage reductions and such, right? So there's also a provision for when you do a wage reduction, did you restore the wages, right? So that's a question that'll get asked in your forgiveness application. So let's say you did one of two. You could do one or two or both of them. You could do both of these things, right? You could have reduced the wages. You could have let go of some employees. So as part of that forgiveness application, it asks you, when you reduce wages, did you restore the wages? If you did let go of your employees, it's going to ask you, did you reinstate those employees? But if you kind of have that clear, and you can show that you've restored and such, I would say just apply now, right? So if you can do that, go ahead. The window is open now. If you need more time to plan, clearly you want to apply later. But I would say my best sense is you don't want to wait till the end of the year. So you kind of want to apply as soon as you can and maximize your loan. Because frankly, I would say that banks and lenders are overwhelmed, and you might see a lot of delays as part of processing this forgiveness application. So I think that was my last slide, Kelly. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you, Gautam. That was some wonderful information. So I know we're going to hold the questions here just for Ronald's presentation. So Ronald, I'm going to ask if you don't mind putting on your video, and I will give you the spotlight.
All right.
There you are.
Good information about Gautam's information is very good. Like I said, it's a lot of information that we need to digest, basically, even for people who, like me, who's work with CPAs and tax professional, we're still trying to basically know what's going on. And like they've been saying, it's a lot of confusion right now. It's a lot of changes, and there's more to come. So basically, I'm the CEO of Curious Finance, and the way that this problem came about is when they put the PPP loan. It's a lot of question in how the business owner is gonna do or gonna pay for it, and so they did the adjustment. They call it the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. So basically, the president signed that on June 5th, 2020. This basically covers a lot of things that we trying to clarify for them that what trying, so that the business owners have more time to basically understand the loan and understand what's going on. So let's see what are the changes that they did, and basically they use the word liberalize over there. Basically, they make it easy for the business owners to follow that law, that the CARES Act, so that everybody can pay the loan in enough time. So one of the things is that they changes is the cover period that Gautam already covered a little bit. Basically that they covered the basically for me too. Just 24 weeks is much more better than the 8 weeks, because it give you more time to reconcile all your payroll, reconcile all your expenses, because everything is covered over there, and it's a lot of we need to put it in detail. So one thing more I suggest is to, I've been talking to the CPAs, and they're saying that having a account that separate from this PPP loan is it's a good idea if you don't have any good bookkeeping, but it's not necessary. It's not required to be for doing that. But like I said, I spoke to the CPA that they said that if you don't have a good bookkeeping, much better to have a separate account, so that it's much better to easy for you to document everything. And then one thing more is if you got the loan before this changes, you have some option to either do the 8 weeks or the 24 weeks. So for like me and Gautam are in one of this opinion that 24 weeks is much better, so that you can have more time to put all the paperwork that you need to do for the forgiveness. And the maturity loan of maturity right now is now in the five years instead of 2 years. And again, the idea is having enough time for the business owners to get the necessary paperwork and necessary to get the money flowing on their businesses, so that they can use that amount as maximum as we can do. And then one thing too is use of the fund. So like Gautam said, two is now is 60%. The original plan was 75%. So, but make sure that you use 60% or more, or else they're not going to be forgiven. That your payroll cost is not going to be forgiven in your in that forgiveness loan. So make sure that's 60% or more. Okay. And then one thing more is the rehiring of people. This is a big problem, because right now a regular person who is pilot EDD, they can get 400 right now. Then and then depending on the state where you are, you can get 200, 300 on the state. So it's hard for the the employer to hire everybody back, or even hire a new one that is qualified in their job. This one of the they call this section of the PPP FA is the safe harboring. Basically, basically they try to protect the business owner too, that they're not going to be disqualified to get the forgiveness if they don't do the necessary way to basically to hire more people, or at least be in the same level when all this are started. That's why it's give you more flexibility to hire people, and then basically to have more time to basically to be in the same and sometimes too, if you want to hire people and then their state is closed down, like here in California, some of the businesses are still closed down. So they will give you time to recuperate and make sure that you can use your PPP loan. And then one thing more is the deferral loan. It's 6 months, 6 months a year before, and now they give you more time to use your it defers the payment of the loan, and everything that you need to pay on that end. So basically that all that are now is based on when the SBA remits or give you the money in your bank, then where they start deferral, they will give you a deferral. So basically, yeah, that's the one of the thing that we're trying to accomplish. And then one thing more is the payroll deferral. Sometimes, like I said, if you cannot hire enough people, how can you use that payroll part of the CARES Act if you cannot hire people? So they're gonna give you a basically a chance to do that. And the effective wages payment, I just want to read it over here. It's March 27, 2020 through December 31 and 2020 is that's the payroll that you can defer. Basically, half of that payroll you can pay it on December 31st, 2020, and half you can pay it on December 31st, 2022. So again, this is gonna give you more time to arrange all the paperwork that you need so that you can get the maximum forgiveness, because our goal, or the goal of the CARES Act, or this PPP loan is really to help you guys to move the economy again. And if you are worried about paying all this payroll, and you're not really can't do it, you're not really helping the economy. That's why they did this PPP chance to adjust some of the all the laws. Sometimes they do make it, and it's not really perfect, or they didn't think about different kinds of scenario that the business owners can be at right now. And like I said, even though sometimes you are in a different state, different situation. So hopefully this will give the SBA too that to have a more straightforward forms, and it's more straightforward to navigate by the business owners. And I think that's all I can say about that. And we're open for question, and I'll bring it back to you, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Ronald. That was very helpful. I've already started receiving some questions here in the chat. If anyone has any other questions, please continue to put those in. I'll start off with the first question, which I actually think we already answered, but I just want to double check with Ronald and Gautam on this one. It was, do I need to have a separate account for storing my PPP funds? From what I heard from Ronald there just moments ago, if you can, but it's not necessary. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Like I said, I spoke to about 100 to 200 people, or CPAs, and even EAs. They said that, like I said, it's based on how you do your bookkeeping.
Okay.
As Gautam explained to you, it's kind of complicated if you don't have the right documents. And I think Gautam can attest on that. That's the way we have to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. The second question that I had here was, if I hired additional employees and kept my original employees, would the new employees count for expense towards forgiveness?
Yeah, so I'll take that. So I would advise you to actually go through the link, the PPP forgiveness link. But roughly what's going to happen is there has to be a reference-based period, right? So it's going to ask you how many employees did you have at the beginning, and that period could be February 15th. So, based on that, so that's got to be that base period. Let's say you had 2 employees on February 15th, and you added like 4 more during the course of COVID for whatever reason. You're not going to be able to go and say, well, I got 6 employees now, so can I get 6 times whatever is the max? You can't claim that, because the reference period always goes back to the beginning of that period. Or you can use last year's period as a reference basis as well. But the short answer is, if you added somebody during that period, you wouldn't be able to claim that because the banker is going to say, well, how much did you pay in payroll at the beginning of that period, i.e. Feb 15? Then that sort of limits, that's the maximum you can do. But I'll also caveat this with what you can also do is, let's say you let go of somebody in that period and you replace them with another employee, then that's fine. You can add those as wages. But again, that, ads and, drops and ads are okay. Just pure ads are not okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. The next question that we have is, how do you account for temp W-2 hourly employee salaries?
Yeah, so essentially you just want to convert those. And I don't know, do you just want me to share? I can probably share.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if you can see this.
Mm-hmm.
So temp or hourly workers. So anybody who works 40 hours or more is one full-time employee. So you can't claim more than 40 hours and say, the 1.25 or such. But let's say, look at the second one, temp or hourly workers. It depends on how many hours they work. If they're working less than 40 hours a week, the average number of hours are divided by 40, rounded to the nearest 10. So essentially you're calculating what they call fractional FTEs. So FTE is full-time equivalents. You're trying to make a ratio. So if somebody works 20 hours a week, that is half an FTE. So you're making that kind of calculation. And there's also some, simplifications you can do, but it's net, that's sort of where we are, right?
Okay, helpful. And maybe we can share this afterwards for anyone that might not be sure how to make those calculations, but that was a great question, Krishna. I'd also like to ask a few more questions here from the chat. If my company is undergoing a change of ownership, how will that affect my forgiveness?
So I didn't delve into that, so I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's one that we'll have to get back to you all on. Let's see here. What other questions do they have? I think we already hit that one. And I think we may have answered this one from Ronald, but I'll go ahead and ask it again just to make sure we have the correct answer. How will I know if the FTE reduction safe harbor rules apply to me?
Well, like I said, I don't.
Yeah, go ahead, Ronald. Yes.
Oh, sorry. So I make sure. Okay, so yeah, if like I said, the example that me and Gautam explained, shared to you guys, if you cannot hire people, you cannot replace the people, or you cannot open up because of the rules and regulation that the different agency of the government put in there. You can still that's applicable.
Okay, great, thank you. And then we have another question here that says, is solo 401k employer contribution in an S Corp forgivable? And if yes, how much, and how do you come with how much to contribute? I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, so I'll hazard a guess, but I would definitely say please speak with your CPA. I know about solo 401ks. Remember that your total amount has a maximum. So a solo 401k means you're kind of a solo person. You're your own independent contractor, gig work or whatnot. So you're limited to that 20k for the 24-week period. Or if you say like 8 weeks, it's 15k. So and solo 401k is a retirement contribution, so it would be included. It is allowed for S corps. So as long as the solo 401k and your regular payroll doesn't exceed 20,833, it should be eligible. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then for employees who make more than $100,000 per year, what non-cash compensation is eligible for forgiveness?
Again, this is my guess. you are limited. The IRS wants you, it just absolutely tries to limit payroll to to the maximum of 100K per year. So in terms of non-cash compensation, that is not specified as part of the rules. So they don't come in and say gifts of stock or, bonds or whatnot, any other property or cars and such. So that is not part of the PPP program as such. So I don't think they would consider, stock grants and such if you're a company that makes stock grants. Those, I think, in my mind, fall outside the purview of SBA forgiveness. So you wouldn't be able to claim it. But I would always advise you go check with your accountant on that.
Sure, that makes sense. And then we have another question back on the W-2 hourly employees. Will their hourly rate be converted to a yearly salary to check eligibility? It sounded like there was a different calculation than doing that, but let us know.
Yeah, again, so there are calculators. If you fill out the PPP long form of forgiveness, it does make some kind of a calculation towards that. Essentially, everything is converted on an yearly basis, and they try to understand from an yearly basis, what does that mean? Are you hitting that in terms of 100K per year? That's the absolute maximum. What does that convert to? Whether it's 50K or 40K, 70K, and it does. So whatever be the whether it's your lender's website or you fill it out with the long form with the actual schedule, it eventually everything converts into that yearly format, right? As a proportion of the yearly wages, assuming an yearly salary is X, you get some percent of X.
Yeah, and if that conversion, would it make them uneligible if it was more than $100,000 after the conversion?
Yeah, you're limited. You're absolutely limited to the max of 100K. So so all the rules are geared towards, let's not pay anybody over 100K. But again, you have 24 weeks period. So again, if they're employees, it does look like 46K is eligible. And if you have done that as part, so full 2.5 months. Yeah. Right.
And then the other question that we're getting is, what if my entire loan is not forgiven?
What that means is, again, so if it's not forgiven, you do have to repay the rest of the loan with the covenants that it has, i.e., what is the maturity period and what is the interest rate. My personal take is, the PPP loan program is still very good, even if you don't have to repay, even if you don't get all of it as forgiven. Even if you get 50% forgiven and 50% isn't. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump on that thing too. Basically, like we said too, that 60%, you need to be 60%, and if you know in the start you have less 60% of the payroll you're gonna be using, you should need already a plan that you're not going to be, you're not going to be forgiven on that deal. So for me, just to, if you have less than 60% of that payroll of the whole cost of your operation, you need to just to be aware how to manage that, especially with the situation right now.
Yeah, I think I saw a question from Krishna saying, will the conversion make them ineligible? Actually, it doesn't make them ineligible. It just limits the amount to 100K max. That's
okay.
The goal.
Thank you for getting to that. Did anyone else, I know we're coming up here on the end of time, were there any other questions from our group today? You can type that there in the chat. If we happen to miss a question, the last question is about
I would assume, yeah. My sense is, I think because phones utility that count as a phone utility, and yeah, so that's
okay. All right, that would count as utility. Great. Well, we thank you all today. If for some reason we didn't get to your question, please let us know. Oh, okay. We do have one more. We'll have time for this one last question. So even if I have exhausted the loan, should I still wait for the 24 weeks? I think we actually got to that one earlier. Was that right, Gautam? That was like, if you've
Yeah.
already exhausted it, just go ahead.
If you have exhausted it, I would say again, go to the calculator, fill it out carefully. And if it shows that you're matching 100% of the loan amount, then it's better for you to file with your lender. So you're ahead of the mad rush that is going to happen very, very soon. And the banks are going to be overwhelmed and you'll see delays in processing of the forgiveness applications.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you all again. Ronald, Gautam, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your time. And I want to thank again KarmaHelp Foundation for hosting our event today, our webinar today. We will make sure to follow up with additional information, but if you would like to find out more information, you can go to karmahelp.org. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon, evening, wherever it is that you're located. And again, we appreciate you. Best of luck.